In this lesson, we're going to go over dividing decimals. And the first thing we need to know about dividing decimals, well, there's three things we need to know about dividing decimals. The first thing is that we only divide by a whole number. Our divisor, when we do the division, has to be a whole number. The second thing, if you can divide and you can count, well then, just like multiplying, you can divide decimals. Okay, so we're going to go over all this in this video today and go over how to divide decimals. But before we do that, we need to clarify something. When I divide 156 divided by 4, I actually want to set up my division this way. The 156 goes on the inside, the 4 is on the outside. Okay, so when we take our division expression, our dividend divided by our divisor, and we set it up with the little, as I call it, the division house, the bracket, they actually seem to change locations, only relative to one another. They're not changing, you're not changing values, you're not changing anything. It's just that's the way it gets set up. So our dividend is our numerator, and our divisor is our denominator. So the dividend, the numerator, goes on the inside. The divisor, the denominator, stays on the outside. Okay, so that's the big thing, because if you're given an expression or if you're working on a problem and you know that you need to divide one number by the other when it comes time to set it up, when you go from your written expression here, the 156 divided by 4, well, the actual division problem is set up this way. The 156 is on the inside, your dividend is on the inside, and the 4, your divisor, is on the outside. So that's the one thing I wanted to clear up before we started. So now, let's begin. Let's look at dividing decimals. And we'll start easy because we're going to start by dividing by a whole number, since that's what I said you have to be able to do, is to be able to divide by a whole number. And it's something that we've already done. When we divided our numerator divided by our denominator to change our fractions to decimals, that's exactly what you're doing. Your denominator was a whole number. You're dividing one number by another number. So, just like when we divide with divide numerator divided by denominator to convert to a fraction to a decimal, we do the same thing with our decimal point. Here's my decimal point. Is right here, 26.25, and if you notice, I've got it set up on the grid paper, and I'm more paying attention to the vertical lines, not so much the horizontal lines, but they're there, so I'll use them. And just like before, you bring your decimal point straight up to the quotient line, and once that decimal point is in place, right here on the quotient line, we're all set to divide. Okay? Alright, so now we have 26.25 divided by 7. Does 7 go into 2? No, it does not. Does 7 go into 26? Yes, it does. It goes into 26 3 times. 3 times 7 is 21. Let's subtract. 26 minus 21 is 5. Bring down the 2. Notice I don't care about that decimal. Once it's on this quotient line, I'm all set. So 52 divided by 7, well, 7 goes into 52 7 times. 7 times 7 is 49. Now I subtract. 52 minus 49 is 3. Bring down the last 5. And 7 goes into 35 5 times. 5 times 7 is 35. I subtract. I get a 0. My decimal terminates. I have nothing else to bring down but zeros. If I wanted them there, I could add them on, but I don't need them, so we don't bother. So 26.25 divided by 7 is equal to 3.75. All right, there's the first example. Now let's look at another example. Now we're going to divide by a decimal. I know you're thinking, but you said you can only divide by a whole number. That's true. So we're going to need to be able to do something with our decimal. So the example that I have, 4.625 divided by 3.7, we need to be able to change our decimal 3.7 to a whole number. Okay? And what we do is we're going to move that decimal point. And this is where the counting comes in. Let me go back to this example here. I said if you can count. Well, we didn't even need to count here because we just moved our decimal point straight up to the line. And seeing that multiplication and division are inverse operations, kind of the order that things get done is inversed. It's reversed. And when we multiply, we did our multiplication, then we worried about the decimal point. While when we divide, we do our division. We do our decimal point first. We worry about that first. Then we do our division. So let's go to the next one. So now we're going to divide by a decimal. I have 4.625 divided by 3.7. And again, I know what I said. I said we can only divide by a whole number. So I'm going to take this 3.7 and I'm going to move that decimal point. How do I move it? Easy. I move it one place to the right. The thing is, since I moved it one place, counted one place to the right here, I'm going to move it one place to the right here. Okay? And there's a rationale, there's a reason behind that, why we do that. So now, I wanted to change the color to. Now I have 46.25 divided by 37. Now I can do my division. The rationale is, remember, this 4.625 divided by 3.7 is just a fraction. 4.625 over 3.7. And if I want my denominator to be a whole number, I would need to multiply that by 10, which moves this one place to the right, so I get 37. And since I need to keep it equivalent, I need to multiply this by 10, which moves that point one place to the right, which is 46.25. So a real quick explanation as to why we move our decimal point and why it's the same number of places inside the division as outside the division. Okay, let's get rid of all this stuff here so we can do our actual division. The only thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to remove the decimal point. I'm not going to erase it between the 3.7. We know that we moved it. It's over here now. So now I have 37 going into 46.25. And just as before, move our decimal point straight up to the quotient line. Here. And then we can divide as if we're dealing with whole numbers. We ignore the decimal point, we ignore everything. Once our decimal point's on the quotient line, we're good to go, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. So 37 goes into 4? No. 37 goes into 46? Yes. 1 times 37 is 37. I subtract, I get a 9. I bring down the 2. 37 going into 92. Let's try 3, because I know 3 times 30 is 90. 3 times 37 is 21, carry the 2. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11. It's too big, I can't do my subtraction, which means that 3 up top is too big. So we must be 1 too much, so we go down. 2 times 37. 2 times 7 is 14. 2 times 30 is 60. 60 plus 14 is 74. And subtract. Group 12 minus 4 is 8. 8 minus 7 is 1. Bring down the 5. Okay. 37 goes into 185. How many times? Well, shortcut. Ignore the ones digit. Look at the 3 and the 18. 3 goes into 18 6 times. But that's 3 going into 18, and this is almost 4. The 3.7 here is almost 4. So I'm gonna back down one. Not only that, I know that a 5 times 7, if I put a 5 up top here, 5 times 7 gets me a 5 down here. So chances are that this is what I want to have there. So 5 times 7 is 35, carry the 3. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 3 is 18. When I subtract, I get a 0. Lo and behold, we have another terminating decimal. 46.25, or 4.625, divided by 3.7 is equal to 1.25, or 1 and 25 hundredths, 1 and 3 quarters, whatever we want to call it. Okay, so in fact, it's not a bad idea to say equals 1.25. And same thing up here. We could say that 26.25 divided by 7 is equal to 3.75 is our answer. Okay? And now here's one more. 1.2 divided by 25 thousandths. Okay? Remember, I need a whole number on the outside. A very small fraction, a very small decimal, 25 thousandths. Just as before, though, we're going to move that decimal point. And this time, we're going to move it 1, 2, 3 places to the right, which means I need to move it 3 places to the right on the inside. Don't just move it 1. I don't care about the dividend, the number inside being a whole number. Like here we had a decimal. Here we had a decimal. What I care about is that I move it the same number of places inside the fraction, or inside the division, as I did on the outside. The dividend, move it the same number of places as I do in my divisor. So since I moved it 3 places on the outside, I need to go 1, 2, 3 places on the inside. Okay, so I then place my decimal point here. Let's change my color. Extend my division line. Add some more zeros on here. And now I have 25 going into 1,200, or 1,200 divided by 25. Okay, because we move this decimal point over to here now, and now we're dealing with a whole number. Okay, 3 places on the outside means 3 places on the inside. Okay. Alright, so now we can do our actual division. Okay. 25 goes into 1, no. 25 goes into 12, no. 25 goes into 120. 4 times 25 is 100. Subtract, I get 20. Bring down the other 0. 25 goes into 200. 8 times 25 is 200. And I know this because 4 times 25 is 100. So if I double that, I get 8, which doubles my 100 to 200. I get 0, and yet I get another terminating decimal. So 1.2 divided by 0.025 equals 48. What's that saying is that 25 thousandths will go into 1.2 48 times. Okay. Now this video is running a little bit longer. I have one more example to show you. But if we want to see something here, 1.2 is the same as 1 2/10 divided by 25 thousandths, okay, which is 12 tenths divided by 25 thousandths, which is the same as 12 tenths times 1,000 over 25. Take my reciprocal. Divide, I get a 1 here, and I get a 100 up here, and then 12 times 100 is 1200 divided by 25. This looks a little familiar. 1200 divided by 25. Okay, here's just another look at it. Alright, one last example. Okay, I'm not going to talk through it too much, except to say that we need to divide by a whole number. So I move a decimal point over one place here. So I move it 1 on the outside, I move it 1 on the inside. Once I get it here, I bring straight up to the quotient line. Now I have 13.22 divided by 6. 6 goes into 13 two times. 2 times 6 is 12. Subtract. And I get 1. Bring down the 2. 6 goes into 12 two times. 12. Subtract, I get a 0. Bring down the next 2. 6 goes into 2 0 times. Doesn't mean I stop. One thing we don't deal with anymore in division, and in 6th grade math and from now on, is remainders. We don't have remainders. We're talking about a decimal, so what can we do? We can add on a 0, and we can keep dividing. 6 goes into 20 3 times. 3 times 6 is 18. Subtract, I get a 2. Another 0. 6 goes into 20 3 times. Multiply 18. Subtract, I get another 2. Hopefully we see that we are now starting to repeat, because if I did another 0, I get 20 again, and I would get 3 again, and 18, and so on. So we can say that 1.322 divided by 0.6 is the same as 2.203 with the repeating bar over the 3 only, because that's the only part that repeats. And that would be our final answer. So there's dividing decimals. Here's 3 for you to try. I'm going to come back to those, so you can pause it there, but I just want to review. First, we only divide by whole numbers. If we need to move the decimal point on the dividend, we move it the same number of places on the divisor. If we need to move it on the divisor, we move it the same number of places on the dividend. So if I move it 3 places on my divisor, I need to move it 3 places on my dividend. I move it once on the divisor, I move it once on the dividend. That way we're always dividing by a whole number. So now you can pause the video or stop the video or let it, whatever. But here's 3 more examples for you to try that we'll go over in class tomorrow.